Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, now we are going to start another talk in this series. May everyone settle down and give the consent with 3 times sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Katame dve dhamma pahatabba avijjāca tanhā chātīti. Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, up to yesterday we took 5 questions and 5 answers given by Venerable Maha and yesterday we tried to understand what are the things one must be thorough or thoroughly understand. That is the mind and the body, or mind and the materiality. And today he is asking, with that amount of knowledge, with your background, which are the 2 things, which 2 things are to be abandoned. And why we are being armed with this mindfulness and the clear comprehension, and be thorough with this mind and matter, and then where it is being aimed at, it is to be abandon this ignorance as well as the craving. So these are the 2 things we have to always keep an eye. But whenever you read the very first sutta, that is Dhammajiva Sutta, the Buddha give only one thing, that is craving. But here, Venerable Sariputta is giving, it is in double fold, the ignorance as well as the craving. The craving is the proximate cause, and the ignorance is the distance cause. So therefore, one has to be aware, both of them. And yet another kind of expression, whenever someone is aiming one's practice to rid of craving, that is called Cheto Vimutti, that is more biased or more inclined towards the tranquility-based meditation. Whenever someone is trying to do away with this ignorance, it's called Panya Vimutti, it's more toward the inside. So there are 2 approaches also, but whatever the thing you are going to cut off, maybe the ignorance, then automatically the craving also will be cut off, because they are working in a chain-like way. And if you manage to cut off the craving, it goes without saying that ignorance also being cut off. But 2 kind of people we can find. Some are engaged or engrossed with craving, and such people keep on perpetuating in this sansaric suffering, because they do not understand their suffering is based completely on this craving. So they keep on accumulating with desire, with the craving, and they expect the sansaric suffering to be reduced, but by their verbal, physical and mental action, they keep on grasping, craving. So they have to understand that and try to do away with, little by little, to do away with this craving. The moment he or she can understand and do away with this craving, then that connection will be cut off, that link will be cut off, and there won't be much of continuation of this suffering. The other type of people, they are more toward the inside. They try to understand the problem as lack of knowledge. or lack of understanding. So therefore, they are trying to observe their own problem by knowledge and direct experience, and therefore two kinds of approaches are there. Whatever may be, you can cut off the link. So in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha showed the cause of suffering as craving, but here Venerable Sariputta says there are which two things are to be abandoned, that is ignorance and the craving. So one has to have both the things understood and still be careful to understand what kind of a personality trait I have. It is more towards the craving or to the ignorance, and accordingly your strategy, your ways and means must be tuned, adopted. So therefore, till you go advanced level, very difficult one to understand whether my path is the tranquil method or my path is wisdom method. So that is a kind of a serious question for the beginner, and not only that, even for the teacher. So one has to keep on practicing, and for my understanding, if you can really explain your mistakes or your errors in the meditation, then it is more quicker and more efficient in understanding the personality trait, and very easy to assimilate an answer. Therefore, whenever you are meditating, the balance reporting, as and when it happens, it's a clear indication what must be the path you have to take. But even then, it is not 100% sure. So you have to adopt your methodology and then apply again and again to understand the real cause. In my lay life, it happened me to go through the agricultural degree, and there we have to find the diseases in the plant. So you see the symptoms, and then when you keep on analyzing the secondary symptoms, primary symptoms, so ultimately when the plant becomes weaker, very difficult for you to separate the root cause and the secondary cause. So under such circumstances, what you do is take the diseased tissues and put it into a culturing, and let that germ or let that bacteria to grow, and you reinfest that to the healthy plants and see what are the germ creating the root or basic symptom, or what are the things causing the secondary symptoms. Then only you can understand, or you can sort out little bit of this complex situation, and there you can get a certain number of figure out what are the primary infection and what are the secondary infection. Then you have to do it again to get the reconfirmation, because whenever the plant becomes weaker, all the surrounding germs and fungus and virus, everything attack. Then the symptoms are in a complex situation. Unless otherwise you treat to the root cause, your whole crop will be out. So therefore, you have to reinfest it. You have to do it 3 times. That is called Koch's postulation. Then only you can understand what is the root cause, what is the secondary cause. So we individual also, while traveling in this samsaric journey or in this world, that very individual do not know whether I am an ignorant-based person or desire-based person. So even if you are happy to start with insight meditation rather than samatha meditation, your likings and disliking won't indicate anything. So you have to apply and see the most of the scientific, so to say, or technical information you get with your reaction rather than your corrections in your meditation. So suppose that whenever you are applying your mind in sitting meditation to a neutral object, how often you can be with the object and no one can be there for 100%. Definitely it is wandering off, running away from due to this and that. So each and everyone, if you are going to avoid and consider as of your weakness or as of your lack of mindfulness or attributing to the lack of morality, so it is too early. Only thing is you have to let it happen again and again without arriving at a decision, but keep on observation. It is called evenly suspended attention with suspended decision. You have to again apply it without thinking that must be avoided and that must be developed, because your first ever observation as well as the decision may be immature, so therefore let it happen again and again. That is the point where you must have so much of faith and so much of tolerance or equanimity. So this is the part very difficult, because our mind is always running with this result-oriented mentality. So you try to do with one shot going to Nibbana line. No one can do it. It's a trial and error. So therefore, whenever you are met up with the difficulty or maybe some reaction within yourself, so even I would say not only develop any inference about that or decision, you have to report it as it happens. Most important thing is without your judgment. Then only the other person can understand and see what is happening. But I found it is very difficult. Each and every person look at the reaction, look at the difficulty, look at the wandering mind, look at the mishap happens always with colored mind, always with hatred. Or whenever something happening positive and you are bound to see continuously with the mindfulness, you become elated and happy to report, but you can understand you are reporting and everything is colored by the desire, undermining desire. So therefore your report is always with the secondary infection. Therefore very difficult to trace the primary root cause, but there's no other way. So after reporting, where the person who is listening must be very careful to understand whether this reporting happen through double positive idea or double negative idea. And if it is so, you have to question sometime, or you have to go back to the source and get more information. That is how you give precise guidelines after the interviews. So since there are ignorance as well as the craving as two variables, very difficult to write a technical writing, or just like a computer study, have a dialog box and read it and go to the next step and have a dialog box and go into the other. It is impossible here. So there, as far as the traditional teachings are concerned, the senior yogi is there, he is helping the other person is meditating and reporting. You have to understand two psychologies are working. Both of them are not much refined. Specifically the beginner is not much refined, and it is colored by result orientation and supply and demand theory. So whenever it is going, only through the mistakes and your reaction to the mistakes, or your decision toward the difficulty is very, very interesting to study. So therefore, how many interviews you must have to report properly is a kind of open question. Very, very difficult. So when I was in Burma, about 18 months, throughout I am being criticized, telling I can't report properly. But I knew, I gauged, telling I am a very good meditator. Because I try to sit in the sitting time and walk in the walking time, that I try my best. But the reporting and give unbiased reporting is very difficult because our mind is always cheating, perverted, always colored. So that very thing we do not know. So the teacher himself is if he or she is going to tell without your report, you will suspect your teacher, telling that he can't understand what I am telling. So therefore it is happening in the interviews, and whenever happening, you have to understand, as the Buddha says, whatever you thought that meditation is good, from the teacher's point of view, it is completely bad. It's so simple. Whatever you thought meditation is bad, it is good. Read the Sutta, Dvaitanupassana, in the Sutta Nipada, the Buddha says the non-practitioner, the commoner, whatever he says this is exists, for the enlightened person it is not existing. Whatever the enlightened being says this is exist, the commoner can't see it, he says it does not exist. So he says world is so topsy-turvy, the communication and the directness of the communication, and direct communication, it never happened in one shot, so you have to keep on reporting. And some people with fear of avoiding lying, avoiding exaggeration, avoiding misrepresenting, they hesitate to report, then ultimately communication will never take place. Rarely only you find one yogi is practicing, and not only that, he or she can directly report, but the same thing you have to do number of times, then only you can understand how the communication takes place. Both the sides must have the fair flexibility in order to have this interview become efficient. Therefore, please remember, in meditation, nothing wrong. Everything is correct. Only the thing is, you don't know how to report. You don't know how to report in an unbiased way. So that is how the picture in the ethical way or in the social way, in the communication with your teacher or with your senior yogi, and exactly the same thing you find in observing whatever arising. If you are observing it with premeditated idea or your prejudices or your stereotype mind, what you see that you are. You definitely will see what you wish to see. Whenever you see again and again and again and again the same object, even though it is boring, even though it is monotonous, you can see the face value is slowly changing. There is a chance for it is to change. That is why the Buddha always prescribe anupassana. Anupassana means repetitive application, repetitive observation. Then only you may understand the very object. So to say, your sitting posture or your in-breath and out-breath maybe, or rising and falling, or distracting sounds, or distracting pain and thoughts. If something is happening again and again, please remember, it has a message for you. It is a mission. If you are going to avoid it, you are avoiding the truth. Things are happening due to the cause and effect relationship. So therefore, if a pain or kind of a thinking, past association or future projections, or kind of thoughts are happening, or any sounds are coming. So you have to understand, it is happening again and again. So my duty is to apply the mind again and again. When it is applying, your impression or face value slowly changing. So this is the only technique we can use it in order to abandon what we should abandon. And that is what we call the scientific world. Science means any experiment you do, whenever it is repeated, it must give results irrespective of the person and the place. Then we call it is scientific. The Buddha is the first scientist. He told, if something happening again and again, you observe it repetitively, or otherwise he says, if there is no such a self-appointed object, you appoint yourself a tangible, practical object which is often present and repetitive apply. When you apply, you can see that how quickly or how frequently or how swiftly object is changing. When it is the changing happen, if you observe it with the neutral mind, I would like to introduce the term with choiceless awareness. That's one of the traits of the mindfulness, choiceless awareness. So more and more you observe, you see different facets or different evolution or different metamorphic stages of the object, irrespective of the object. Whatever it may be, repetitive application is the way to cut through this ignorance as well as this craving. So more and more you apply to the same object, so to say, we'll say primary object, more and more you apply, the desirability of the object, if at all, more and more you apply, definitely it is disappearing, if it is dwindling it off. So it is a given fact. Anything you associate for longer time, everything is fading off. To the face value, at the first impression, only everything very attractive. So what we do is, we are changing the shape and the mode and the object and everything, and never look at it again and again. So therefore in meditation, what you do is, let it happen again and again. That's called bhave-tabbang, or cultivate. And when you are cultivating, you observe same thing with the open-mindedness. When it is happening, if at all, if there are any desire or any attachment, definitely it is reducing. And the second thing is, you are bound to see different facets of the same object. So that means if at all was there any ignorance, the ignorance is slowly reduced by your under-the-nose experience. Not by borrowed experience, not by your premeditative ideas. And your own under-the-nose experience, that is what we do in Vipassana. And ultimately, without borrowing from someone, without any projections, you are reconfirming the same thing. And this is the answer for the getting rid of desire also, ignorance also. So, but we are impatient, we wanted to cut through very quickly, but it never happens. If you are going to cut through by shortcuts, you have to depend on other sources, you have to borrow from the other sources, it never becomes your original experience. So that is why the yogi, at the beginning, they must have the correct perspective, but no one starts with the correct perspective. Everyone starts with misperception and all the kind of likings and disliking. So therefore don't ignore or don't disqualify any person. Each and every person have the equal ability or equal access to this experimenting. And if you are helping or if you are in a position, only thing is let him or she do again and again, listen to it, just like in a free association, just like in a psychiatric counseling. Just listen, the same thing happen. But if possible, If you can listen like a deaf person, you are the best psychiatrist. You will never believe it. You must not add anything. Let he or she to observe it, and with full professional credibility, he or she come and express the experience. You listen, but never add anything. Anything you add, maybe as a senior meditator or as a teacher or as the mentor, you are getting committed into that. You have to ask him or he or she to do it again and again. So the listener is listening as a deaf person, and in the recent research that they have found, in early stages like 1918, 1919, like Sigmund Freud mentioned exactly that in counseling and in the free association, if you are a well professional, qualified counselor, you must listen to it just like a deaf person. But all his followers ignored it and told it is, how can you listen as a deaf person? You must be attentively listening and you must add something. The Sigmund Freud is the person in the Western psychiatrist, and he mentioned do. So likewise, imagine this is two people, the psychiatrist and the patient, and the patient is expressing with hope that the psychiatrist will not divulge information. Psychiatrist professionally says, no, I am not going to divulge, and he is telling, and the other person is listening very attentively, very carefully, but do not analyze quickly, do not arrive at a decision and come back tomorrow or 3 days time again you listen. This is exactly what happened in the mindfulness. Within yourself, you are the psychiatrist, you are the patient, mindfulness is the remedy. Let the mind to look at the in-breath and tell what the mind going to see, observing mind going to see. And again ask to go and again look at the second breath, third breath, fourth breath, without arriving at a decision. Then only mind is become open. That is the answer for the ignorance. Otherwise, you can understand how much preconceived ideas or how much cheating nature you are possessing without your knowledge. So, even with Buddha is not there, his teaching is available, ask you to be choicelessly be aware or evenly suspended attention and repetitively observe the same thing, whatever may be frequently happening, and that is how you are going to see your personality trait. Suppose that you are observing the in-breath and out-breath, 1001 complaints may come. Mind directly never go to the in-breath and out-breath, even though you are adverting it, even though you are going to apply into that, so much of distractions are happening. So, whenever this is happening, only thing you have to remind is, okay, distractions are there, but the breath is there. Anytime you wish, you can again apply into that. Whenever you apply for the second time, can you maintain your mind just like the beginner's mind, without distracted, without disappointment or without hatred? And each time if you can apply with the beginner's mind, that is the birthright we get as a human being. But if you are going to apply the mind second time with the distraction and with the reaction, definitely you are end up with so much of agitation, so much of tension and so much of frustration. That is the story regarding the beginner. So you have to be very patient and let he or she knows you have to have the beginner's mind. You have to have the choiceless awareness. You have to have the evenly suspended attention, but they are not appreciated in the society at large. The society is always reactive. Whenever you apply, whenever you invest something, definitely you must get the result or benefits. So that is how our mind is in supply and demand theory. So in the meditation you are repetitively applying. So there the faith on the Buddha is very, very important, and keep your moral integrity very, very important, and the mindfulness is very, very important. Whenever it is happening, you can understand when and where your mind goes, and face to face with the breath. You are supposed to see through the beginning to the middle to the end. Observe the breath and report it. Don't just be aware. You must have some kind of expressibility. You have to articulate to your teacher. Then only next day you can get the mind recharged and rejuvenated. And when and where distractions happen, that also must be reported in equal vigilance, and you must see with the help of the teacher, whenever distraction happens, do you react or do you try to understand it is happening due to cause and effect relationship, and due to my natural thinking, this is the way it is reacting, or this is the way it is get defeated. If you can give a fair report, it is very easy for the teacher to convince you this is more indicative who you are, rather than your success with the primary object. So if you wish to know who am I, hardly you can read it through your success. In meditation, the mistakes or wandering, daydreaming, fantasizing, and you will slowly figure it out, who am I. The who am I is a spiritual question and a spiritual thing you have to ponder into, but directly you are not doing it by primary object. Whenever it is going with distractions and the daydreaming and fantasizing, the frequency of the distraction indicate who you are, and if you are not willing to understand who you are, your ignorance will never go off. If you are going to avoid it, if you are going to hate it, never you can progress. Your defilements are never dealt with. And when and where you are going on meditation, it is very interesting. More than a commoner going for sensuous pleasure or sexual pleasure, meditators are easily irritating. It's a universal character. Whenever you are at home or you are with the normal in the pleasure principle, your basic problem is the attachment. Whenever you go meditation, your basic problem is hatred. By mere taking precepts, by mere taking this moral responsibility, you become easily irritant. And I am always observing the difference between the non-ordained people and the ordained people. It's full of hatred. It's full of hatred. You can see the way they are behave and all the kind of thing, because I am qualified to do it because I am full of hatred. I am a monk. So before ordination, it took 10 years for me to understand, because I heard once you become in the higher precepts or higher morality, you look down everyone and you expect that kind of thing. Ultimately, it is easily irritant. So 10 years I decided not to become a monk, and later I found, never mind, otherwise I have to earn something to eat, but once become monk, you are get free of charge. So it was one of the good thing it happened me, and so I took it up, and I observed they are very, very ardent, they are very, very, how do you call, self-restraint or self-mortification sometimes, easily irritant. So in the meditation, they expect quick results. But now, when you go to a meditation center, you can see 80% or more lay people. Only very limited people, they are supposed to spend their time in meditation, but what they do is basically they give full-fledged fight and trial and failure. They are not going there because they are so quickly expecting results and irritation can happen. So when and where if you can attribute the irritation is a result of mindfulness, imagine the way of you are thinking. Then you can understand this irritation is due to mindfulness. If you are not mindful, you can do any mistake and your pent-up energy will be gone out. But when you become mindful, your tension gets pent up and ultimately easily irritable. So if someone is going to show you, it's a hell of a communication problem. If you are to understand, before I understand the mindfulness, I had so much of things to weigh out and let out, but once become mindfulness, your bag is completely tight and the internal pent-up happen. And if you are ready to understand, if you are ready to accept it as a universal fact, more and more I become mindful, irritation is a part and partial, and share with all the meditators. We are easily irritable. Never mind, it's a sign. Generally, it is a socially bad sign. But for the meditators, it's a good sign and it's a result of meditation. And you find fault with yourself. Fault finding. Or self-criticism. And no one attribute that as a sign of mindfulness. And if you are ready to understand, whenever relationship happen, whenever transaction happen, you as a person, as an individual, even it's a success or failure, how much you find it as your personality or personal mistakes or personal mistakes of others, and it is more vivid and vigilant when and where mindful, because you are vigilant, you are diligent, and mistakes are highlighted, amplified. So if you can make a reason to be glad on this self-criticism, you get tons of gladness. And if you can finding fault with others itself as a reason to be glad, because you are mindful and you are diligent and vigilant, and then you can easily apologize. You can ask pardon and tell, sorry, this is not what I meant. If it has happened, please forgive and forget. Your relationship will be rejuvenated. And you never expect anything to happen in the perfection. Things are in chaotic. Whatever the meditation you do. So these are the signs, how your ignorance is being dealt with. Otherwise you try to be a Samaritan, a perfectionist, and everything working in work to rule, and so much so you get crucified. But in the mindfulness, if you understand the choicelessness or choiceless awareness or evenly suspended attention, and your vigilance is increasing, so that then and there information increasing, and imagine if you can find another partner, another companion with this kind of mentality, it is more than Nibbana. It is more than Nibbana. So when we are in Nilambe, we always know each other and we get together, we discuss each other to make other person as your mirror. To see your image by your reaction and interaction with the other person, and you are very happy to get others' impression. And then you can see how my image appears in his mirror. And you also sometimes you can mirror off the other person's reaction, and you must have unconditional expression to tell, this is what I feel about you. And if it is so, I would say there is no place for the tension to arise. And you don't miss Buddha. This dialogue itself Buddha. You can easily trust other person because they are also honest and genuine practitioners, and their impression is more than any other lawyer or any other kind of thing, because they are sensitive people. So take this meditative group as a sign of peace or sign of understanding each other and trust them. And when the trust happens, you find it is aberration, you find irritation, you find heat. But you know you are really touching the root core issue. You are understanding with each and every interaction, or each and every with the primary object or secondary object, what is happening in the bare way or in the beginner's mind way. And even though it is sour in taste, even though it is difficult to swallow, you know that you have never taken this kind of a path before. Earlier you try to hide your mistakes. Even you try to gloss over when you are talking with others. Now you can directly tell, I am sorry, I can't make lullabying with you. This is what I feel. And you can see a lot of people get dropped off. They are not happy with the truth. So what a nice way. And when you are climbing up the hill, you can see the amount of climbers is reducing. And don't consider it is as you are socially becoming unpopular, or your thinking is wrong. And that is how others are going to drop you, others are going to pull you by leg. That you must understand what you are talking is based on your direct experience. You have to take the other partner as the mirror image, and when you are keep on going, the reduction of this ignorance is somewhat like a reduction in this asava, that's the taints and the kind of intoxication into your mind. So therefore, you can understand, unless otherwise you expose yourself for these encounters, you can be solitude in one place and meditating without meeting people. No refinement can take place unless otherwise you have enough experience beforehand. So therefore, our relationship with the people and the climate and the food, clothes and everything, each and every time indicate your personality traits. You must be very sharp, as well as you have to help every one of your co-practitioners. If you have anything to tell, please let me know, because I consider you as a neutral reflector or a mirror. So when it is happening, we can feel the atmosphere, what you call the sasana. Sasana is, or Buddha sasana, not always available. Very rarely only, in the midst of aeon of time, we find other co-practitioners. Otherwise, if there is no co-practitioners, no go. How one individually can come out? So therefore, more and more you practice, and you can find the true people or real practitioners hard to find, because many are gloss over, many are try to show off and just show your compassion and kind of thing. They are artificial thing. So when you go on, you can see, even though it is irritating, or even if it is abrasive, or even if it is burning, you feel that something is happening. So therefore your asava or your taints, slowly you can understand. So usually in the Noble Eight 12-fold dependent origination, the primary cause, the original cause is the ignorance. And ignorance is going to give these volitional activities, and that is going to give the consciousness, and consciousness is dealing with nama rupa, and ultimately it is developing into 6 faculties. You know all the kind of thing. And then through the 6 faculties, contact happen, through the contact the feeling happen, and then tanna. And you can understand the chain reaction going there. And root cause is avidya. So whenever someone says the God is the root cause, then the others may ask, what is the cause for the God? So likewise, avidya also be having a cause. That the Buddha mentioned, it's asava, that is your traits, that is your kind of likings and disliking, any image, any impression come into you, you never look at it like a beginner's mind. You see through your tainted glasses, and this glass is always misrepresenting. So if you know simply you are seeing through a tainted glass, that's one step ahead. That is very difficult. You have to be really honest to yourself, and you have to, each and every interaction must be appreciated, understanding each and every impression happen, each and every impingement happen through these tainted glasses. If there is no interaction happen, no basic data for you to analyze, let it happen. Always think, my impression is colored. So answer is, look at again and again to them. Observe the same thing again. The very understanding of my each and every impingement is colored by my personality trait. It is called asevana pratyaya, that some or the other you feel what you see is not really existing. What existing I can't see. This is like a dream, or this is like a holographic three-dimensional thing, or it is like a mirage. And if you have that kind of a basic understanding, you will look at it again and again and again. Otherwise, you believe what you see. So therefore, first and foremost, you must have your share of this. What you see is not existing. What is existing is not seen. You can't see. And that kind of a way, if you are observing, you have the impermanent notion, where your mind is ready to see it is changing nature. But if you believe this is existing and existing what I see, then you are worried whenever it is changing. So therefore, at the beginning, you must have asevana pratyaya, or kind of your preparedness for encounter with the what we see is not really for our benefit, or the reality exists. So you have to look at it again and again to see its transient nature. That itself is very, very rare in the world. No one is ready to accept the things are somewhat like a camouflage, somewhat like a dream, somewhat like a mirage. So that itself is difficult. So therefore, what we are now talking is not easy to communicate with the society at large. Only limited people ready to accept that things are changing. So therefore, you must look at with that impermanent notion. And once that happens, the Buddha says, then only meditation start. You are trying to prove that. That is what you call meditation. The changing nature, you are looking into the object, not to confirm its continuous, permanent shape, permanent nature, permanent mode, permanent name. Whenever it is changing the shape, the mode, the manner and the name, you never rush to fight with and let it happen. And that is how the meditation come into being. Before meditation, you must have asevana pratyaya, or your due share of how to look at the object. So many people without that kind of asevana, or its own direct acquaintance with this impermanent notion, when they meditate, when and where the object change, when and where object changes to another object, each and every time they people develop tension. They people develop irritation. They people feel threat. So if you have kind of asevana pratyaya, and if you are going to prove it, if you are going to cultivate it, then whenever something is disappointing, whenever you become disheartened, you find it's a kind of a clue. Situation is not under my control. Situation is not governable. Even though it's a failure, even though it is a distraction or disappointment, it indicates what you expect never going to happen. So this kind of preparedness if you have that kind of preparedness, your meditation, each and every failure is it's a blessing in disguise, but you can keep on with the failure because at a time you feel so sick in your mind. You feel sick in your body, so you have to give it a little bit of time and again let the mind go in the normal run and again take time and show the bhavana pratyaya, letting that non-governability to manifest, letting that impermanent notion to manifest, letting that suffering to manifest, but don't vehemently reject it. So that is how the meditation has to keep on practice. But today, when you are looking at the people meditating at large, they basically not prepared, their mind is not geared, their mind is not ready and prepared for this kind of a thing. So when they are reporting, we can understand, if you are really observing, they started with kind of a permanent notion, not happy with this, anything to change. And when it is happening, even though you have proved, yes, things are not governable, things are not happening as I like it, it is up to you, it's okay. But again the Buddha says, bhavana prati is not enough. Bahulikata, you have to do it for the sake of doing, for the reconfirmation or galvanizing effect, and for that only the monkhood is necessary. Till that you can do it as a layperson. So it is mentioned in the Chula Sunyata Sutta, Pottapada Sutta, and the Anijasappai Sutta. You can be as a layperson, have your perspective, things can go wrong, no problem. Whenever it happens, you make a point, yes, that things are not governable, so you make your preparedness and set aside 1 hour sitting, 1 hour walking or so, and in there you do with that prepared mind, and you can understand each and every time you are going to prove that theory, non-governability is 100% correct. And after that, if you wish to live up to that, if you wish to change your the livelihood, then only you have to select a forest under a tree or go to a solitude place and completely devote your life, because by that time you have enough tools, you have enough basic experience, and then you are just like a scientist in the lab, is full time you can take it. So if it is not so, many think by becoming ordained or as a gone forth, as a Samaneri thing will sort it out. That is the mistake, I think, many mendicants or many monastics are suffering, because they consider the renunciation is a big issue without the preparedness of the mind. So luckily I started with the lay meditation center. Our basic principle was not to become a monk. Or sarcastically look at the monks as national jokers. So after long time only, by digesting it or by understanding, I thought of never mind, I will jump into it. All the frog jump into the pond, plop. And everyone practiced with me as a layperson. They told I am a black-legged person because I gave up my basic principle because I became a monk. And it was like a rebirth or born-again Buddhist. To do it and experimenting it. And I find many monks come into the monastery, their basic mind is not prepared. They think ordination is a big issue. Ultimately expect so much of results within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and if it is not happening, they find fault with the teacher, find fault with the center, find fault with the primary object, and they go and start writing books. That is what the Buddha taught. So you go to a bookshop, you can see half-hearted and half-boiled yams writing like anything, because their preparedness is not there. So Lokohamdro used to say, Imagine one day you are going to get a very sharp understanding or very clear insight, and you are happy now because it is unexpected and all of a sudden electrically happened. And if you reflect back, the Buddha, Lokohamsa used to say, before going to sit itself, you can see some signs of your preparing of the mind. Then only sitting will become successful. But before going that you do not know, but after a good experience, if you come back and say, the preparation of the mind is slow, very slowly happening. So all of a sudden, a quick satori or quick insight can happen, your ignorance can cut off, but it's a kind of a wear and tear in a slow way. The Buddha mentioned, when a person is using an axe, or I don't know the term, adze or something like, they use the hand axe, they are using carpenters very proficiently in Burma. The Buddha says that when the carpenter is using the axe, you can see his usage by the polished nature of the handle. The handle is so polished that indicates it has been often used. And by looking at the axe, the blade, you can see it is very sharp at the edge. That means again and again against the whetstone he is rubbing. So he do not know each time he is using the axe, each time he rub against the whetstone, how much wear and tear happens. But after a long time only you can see the polished handle and the sharp edge of the blade, it is wearing and tearing. More and more wear and tear, more and more you in the use of the gadget. After using so much, whenever the blade is worn out, the Buddha says, to throw that away, he need not any expert understanding. No need of an expert to come and say it is useless now, he throw away. So likewise the ignorance is wear and tear, night and day, day night. So whenever you are keep on practicing, when and where you go for result oriented or compromise that I will sit 2 hours and therefore end up with first jhana or second jhana or that, this and that, I think kind of a sickness in the mind, the compromise. So if you can do for the sake of doing, that is the point, that right from the beginning no tension, and you know how to maintain the no tension situation, and whatever you do, you will get the reconfirmation, that is it happens. So therefore cutting off of ignorance, almost like cutting off of the desire. When the axe is worn out, throwing away is naturally happening because it is useless now. So that is the way, the regular practice, if someone keep on without getting discouraged or encouraged by the result, that is the secret in this cutting off of the ignorance and the desire. So therefore, when it is happening, you see your the colored glass, seen through the colored glass, slowly you understand whatever you see, it expressing who you are. So it indicates what you see that you are. By looking at the world, if you are going to say world is full of happiness, that your mind is full of metta. If you say world is completely corrupted and gone, that you are talking with the hatred. Not the world is the world, but the way. And if you can reflect that upon, you can see your impression upon one object is often changing, and that not only by closed eyes and cross-legged and meditating. There's a kind of inferential, kind of a deductive thinking, or kind of a dialogue is a must. So therefore, not that meditators need any theoretical understanding. Theoretical understanding is a must. But with the practice, you must know when to apply and how to apply. Therefore, Mahasi Sayadaw used to say, the direct experience as well as the deductive knowledge or inferential knowledge, both known as vipassana knowledges. So therefore, only the rule of thumb is always keep the direct touch first and interpretation let happen behind. The interpretations are the thing confirming your understanding, but not by single occasion. Again and again when it is happening, you can understand your openness or your different ways of interpreting the same thing increasing. So when that is happening, there is no room for the tension to happen. There is no room for the frustration to happen. So you learn kind of a way of living or livelihood. Main thing is not to worry. That is the life. Whatever may be, if you are going to worry, you are the person to suffer. And yesterday we tried to understand, whenever the phenomena start, or whenever any experience of phenomena ceases to exist, it is reducing the very beginning at the end, almost simple nama rupa, or it flux, or in the vibration. And whenever you are familiarize it, through meditation or by reflection, whatever it may be, whenever you familiarize it, there's a kind of repulsivity for that kind of a flux, for that kind of a vibration. Or we feel like lonely. That is because we have a kind of a desire, we have a kind of a pleasure principle. Always we are chasing behind, but very truth, that mere primordial form of the nama rupa is not desirable. If you know this is the reality, this is at home, you can see it is not desirable. That is why we are making escapism. Instead of happy to see things, hear things, smell, touch. But whatever the desire for the hearing, smelling kind of thing, that very flux, that very vibration is always there. So the moment you are to observe both of them reciprocal to each other, and not to chase behind the pleasure principle, not to completely try to be with the primordial form of the nama rupa, instead see both of them as a reciprocal thing, you can understand that very perspective, not depending on any other external your nomenclature. Each and every person's perspectives are very, very important, because the beginning of the phenomena is 100% pure, no defilements. End of the phenomena also 100% pure, no defilements. But we fail to understand because it is less dramatic. It is not very attractive. It is self-negating kind of. You can't create any conceit on the beginning and the end. Instead, you try to catch all the middle, and you are jumping from middle to middle because of the desire. So when and where you understand the desire is sending you from the tip of the iceberg to tip of the iceberg, one day you will see the magic of this desire. You will slowly see, before jumping into the other tip, what is the descending, and again the climbing into the other iceberg. So whenever you see, it is not that it is rare, it is so abundant, we hate it, we don't like it. So this perspective, how many occasions or time it is going to take, unimaginable. And the next thing is, when you are in this primordial form of this, no separation of nama rupa, it is just flux, it don't give any kind of a knowledge. So therefore you like crystallized knowledge, physics, chemistry, geography, all the kind of, they are all rotten, they are all past. But this is very fresh. But you can't categorize this as knowledge. So therefore you, more and more you like knowledge, it is almost amount to your ignorance to this very purity. So therefore, in Salayatana Vibhanga Sutta, the Buddha says, the desirable feeling is the opposite of the undesirable feeling. Everyone knows whenever someone is attached to the desirability, he hates undesirable. If someone is sadistic and other messages, he will be hating the desirable feeling. And then they are reciprocal each other. And then Buddha says, the no pain, no pleasure, compared, you have to reciprocal with the ignorance. You don't know it. The moment you comes to know no pain, no pleasure is the majority, you are with pleasure. If you do not know, it is the undesirable and the pain. And then this ignorance, the Buddha says, that not knowing the no pain, no pleasure is counterpart with the knowledge. If you know you are ignorant to your no pain, no pleasure, that is what you call the knowledge. So therefore we think the ignorance and the knowledge is polar apart. But the Buddha says no, they are very close to each other. So when and where ignorance happens, if you are ready to accept it, I mean not the ignorance that you thought about what is happening under your very nose, that very understanding is the knowledge you have to have. So the moment you appreciate it, you find it is not the problem of scarcity, but it's abundant, but you do not know how to see the blessings in the disguised form. And when it is happening, even if you manage to see it, you will be in a hell of a problem how to communicate with the other people, always chasing behind the pleasure principle. They are not happy. They think that the pleasure is something magical, the God power has to come and do, so I will do anything in order to gain the pleasure. They never understand that the pleasure and pain depending upon your perspective. So therefore, understanding your own ignorance, understanding your own misunderstanding, the Buddha says no one can do for you. You have to do it by vigilance in your interaction with the experience and other people. And when and where you understand your ignorance or your misunderstanding about yourself and kind of thing, no one can rob it, no one can give it to you. Therefore, Buddha never recognized himself as a savior. He just told, let the phenomena take place as and when it happens, and try to observe it as and when it happens without prejudgmental ideas, and even the prejudgmental or premeditated ideas there, understand this as the meditated idea, so that you will be slowly exposing into the present moment. So therefore, whenever you sit simply, if you can be aware, now I am here and sitting, even though we are without going into the in-breath and out-breath, or understanding the rising and falling, you are already a full qualified meditator, because you are here and now. And try to maintain that awareness, if possible 1 hour, safely I can say you are an arahant, or fully enlightened being. And if you know this is my game to be here and now, a lot of distractions are there, sounds and thoughts and anything can happen, but don't complain and worry about that. When and where possible, as a beginner, bring it back to either to here and now or to the in-breath and out-breath. Then I would say you are an enlightened being. Not fully enlightened, but you know. And therefore, then onward, whatever the distractions happen, you see, it can't make any permanent damage. Again, you can go to the here and now. You treasure it. It carries no any knowledge. It carries no any desirable thing, but you make a point to be glad because you are here and now. You are happy because that carries, that need no any knowledge, no any theoretical knowledge, and it is something abundant, you have to be exposed into that. So therefore no one can capitalize it, no one can have any authority about that. So mindfulness also, sometimes it is explained, no one can have authority about mindfulness, no one can say you cannot be mindful I am going to cut off your mindfulness quota. No. Any person at any time be mindful, therefore very difficult to put it into a frame like religion. It is human, so therefore I find the mindfulness is most difficult thing to understand for Buddhists. So they try to make it religious. They want to make it colored with the ism. But the mindfulness, when it come into in its pure form, of course Buddhism gives it a lot of conducive factors and the supportive information and all the kind of thing. But the mindfulness is a birthright. Buddha says in the Samidhi Sutta, as a Kimulaka Sutta, Sabbe Dhamma Sathadipateya. Each and every time mindfulness is guarding, mindfulness is leading. Only thing is you don't know. If you know that each and every time you are mindful, only thing is you have to appreciate it. You have to accept it. But if you find the ways and means to say, no, I am not mindful, mindful is distracted to this and that, definitely you are not going to get the benefit. So therefore, consider the mindfulness as a birthright. More than anything in the world, if you can appreciate it, it is not the Nibbana, but it's the shortest cut. Keep as much as possible the mindful that each and every moment you be mindful, your ignorance will be dealt with momentarily. Your desire will be dealt with momentarily. To come up to a substantial level, you have to keep on practice against the time. And whenever it is practicing, you may or may not be aware how much the ignorance going cut off and how much the desire being cut off. It is not a must for the beginner. Whenever you are practicing, after a certain level only, you can see. And to end the talk, I would say, whenever you get a chronic disease and eternal pain, then only you will understand the value of mindfulness. And specifically at your deathbed. And more become old age. But don't wait till the deathbed and the old age and the sickness to develop mindfulness. Then too late. You must have your prime time develop mindfulness, and ultimately whenever you are in trouble, it is a full guardian. So therefore, practice yourself, experience yourself, and try to communicate with the people, those who are in the frustration and the depression and kind of thing. Or each and everything have a short curative answer as well as preventive answer. Mindfulness is the main thing. That is why Venerable Sariputta at the beginning it says, you have to take care about the mindfulness and the clear comprehension. So whatever the time and any asset you invested upon that, never go without any result. Even though it is not substantial, you can feel it. So with that remark, I would like to sum up today's talk. Thank you very much for listening.